Everyone's favorite boss tournament is back and we've reached round 1 of the playoffs, ladies and gentlemen. The boss is Normal Phase, the map is Luminous Cove, and the mode is Least Cache. So on a map with this much water space and playing for Least Cache, everyone would probably think of one strategy. Brickle and a boat spam, or a submarine spam. But you have to remember, inside of the boss tournament there are always restrictions, and this week, Geraldo and Brickle are banned, and then alongside of those heroes, Beast Handler's banned. You can only place up to 10 submarines, 5 boats, and 2 ice monkeys. Paragons are also banned, but a Paragon's probably too expensive to use anyways in a Least Cache event. So with all of these restrictions in mind, what is the best strategy? Well, let's find out. Which takes us into my run here where you can see I've already got a Zeely and I just now place a helicopter. This heli is pretty much going to cover a couple pivotal rules for us. I'm planning on building it into a support Chinook, which the support Chinook is going to be all the farming I need for the entire run, as I'm not planning on spending much cash whatsoever, so I don't need that much farming. But in addition to providing farming for me, it's going to be able to move towers, which is really important, and stall rounds. And then what's the purpose of a Zeely, you might be wondering? Well, a Zeely is actually one of the most popular heroes in Least Cache. The reason behind that is the totem, guys. The totem is fantastic from Zeely. It's got pretty good uptime at a high level of Zeely, and it gives your towers in range extra pierce, extra range, but more importantly, extra attack speed. It's basically like giving your towers in range a second Jungle Drums buff. And since Least Cache events are typically won with non-Paragon strategies, having that extra Jungle Drums buff can be extremely helpful in cutting some cash. Either way, we are just chilling with the heli and the Zeely, both alone, and saving up for that support Chinook, which is actually not going to be afforded for a while. Support Chinook is pretty expensive at 9,500. We do take down round 38 though, with using a Zeely totem to kind of help us out, give that heli some pierce, and we're good. Then on round 39, I finally purchased the support Chinook, which actually doubles the damage of the projectiles as well, so our defense is quite a bit stronger now. And now it's time for the tier 1 boss defend. We're going to start by Chinooking a Zeely into a specific location and placing an ice tower pretty much in the center of the water. It'll make sense why I have this ice here later, but for the time being, it's just going to kind of help me out a little bit defensively and stall these rounds a bit for me too, as I can blow back Starbucks with my heli into the ice range. But yeah, I've flown through the first 40 rounds for you guys just because there hasn't been too much interesting going on before this point, as we just had 2 towers placed. We were support Chinook farming a little bit. Now things will get more interesting though, as we take down this 10,000 HP tier 1 boss. Pretty much the plan with this defend is I want to defend the boss as cheaply as possible, obviously, while building towards what my tier 5 setup is. That's kind of the whole idea with Least Cache. Normally the first 4 tiers are somewhat easy, and then the tier 5 defend is very hard because you just want to defend it with as bare bones defense as possible. But either way, the boss has now reached the range of a Zeely. That's why I moved a Zeely into this location, because the Zeely can ignore obstacles and hit the boss even though it's actually elevated higher than the Zeely. That's one thing about this map, which a lot of people forget, is there's levels of elevation to this. There's actually 3 levels of elevation. And it's pretty much based on the pools. You can see there's a top pool that's pretty big. There's a smaller pool that's right above my heli, and then there's 2 big middle pools. And the 2 big middle pools are the lowest of elevation. Which you might be wondering why I'm even talking about this, because I don't even have anything that gets blocked by elevation really at this point. Well, the reason why I'm worried about it is because the next tower I'm placing is what my whole strategy is going to be relying upon. And that's the Dartling Gunner, guys. I did some testing before this boss event even started. Not as much testing as some of my previous events because I was somewhat time limited this week. But through my little bit of testing, I found that MAD is most likely the strongest strategy. The reason behind this is, one, the other strategies I was thinking about using, like submarine spam or boat spam, were kind of restricted through banning Admiral Brickle and limiting the placements of the boats. But also, the MAD is just a widely used tower inside of boss events altogether. It does an insane amount of damage with the ability. It can get easily buffed too for cheap with just like Jungle Drums, Alk buff, Overclock, a Zeely totem, and it's strong enough to solo normal bosses even at tier 5 if given enough track length, which this map is a pretty long track in my opinion. And we do hit that 3rd skull, so only 1 skull remaining. The boss is going to jump forward quite a bit. I think we've got time though. We have Hydro Rocket Pods now placed too, which is helping our damage quite a bit. I guess one other thing I should kind of explain here. Why did I even go for an ice tower and place all of my defense on the water if my strategy is reliant on a tower that has map-wide coverage like the MAD? Well, the reason behind that is you want your MAD to be close to the boss. The ability is where the vast majority of the damage of the MAD comes from, and the ability has actually a good amount of spread even if you buy the focus firing cross path. So if I placed my Dartling, for example, on the land at the bottom, it would be far away from the boss at a ton of points in time, and it would be missing its shots later in the game. So having my defense placed on top of the water on an ice tower is pretty important. And we did take down the tier 1 boss. Not that difficult, 28,000 spent so far. Now after the tier 1 boss, before the tier 2 boss, nothing too special is going on. We basically are just using our heli crate abilities, targeting everything in an order to stall the rounds to the maximum, and saving for the MAD, as that will be my plan for the tier 2 defend. And we do reach round 60, about 20k away from the money I need, so it'll come down close if I can afford this MAD or not. Let's see. First of all, we're going to target our Dartling towards the boss and use the Rocket Storm ability off the start. Even though the boss is elevated above my Dartling, some of the boss's hitbox kind of spills over, so the Dartling can hit the boss a little bit here. But later in the game, that will become a problem I have to deal with, the boss being in locations where the Dartling cannot reach. You can see now, at this point, the boss is actually outside of the range of the Dartling explosions, and I can no longer hit that boss until it reaches the middle pools, unfortunately. Then once we start damaging the boss again, we use a second Rocket Storm ability. The Rocket Storm ability is not really dealing that much damage against the boss, but I still need to get as much damage as I possibly can en route to saving for the MAD. And oh, I almost died against the ceramics there. I did not even see that. Okay. Gotta be careful about that too. Use the ZZ Totem on top of everything. Help us out a little bit there. And we'll use that third Rocket Storm ability right away. And on round 62, there are some regrow camo rainbows, so we were able to stall those out for quite a bit of time just to maximize the heli crate ability usage, which is good. With hitting that first skull of Phase towards the end of round 62. Phase, though, is already like probably halfway through the map, maybe even farther, and we've only hit one of the 4 skulls. The pacing is not good, but we're what, 9k away from a 40 mad? We're getting close. We do end round 62 though, here, after I use the max amount of heli crates. And we've reached round 63. Bunch of ceramics we need to deal with. Let's target our Dartling here, and it looks like I would have died. So now we have another challenge. We have to beat round 63 while the boss is still out. I used the Rocket Storm ability for the first wave of ceramics this time around, and with some targeting we deal with it. Okay, so now there's 2 waves of ceramics remaining. We use the totem now, and we'll have to keep the Rocket Storm kind of targeted on the ceramics. By the way, it's very intentional that I haven't bought Laser Shock. The reason behind it is Laser Shock doesn't really help the MAD at all. It's like +1 damage on pretty much 500 damage projectiles. It's helpful for the Rocket Storm for sure. But if I can avoid buying Laser Shock for the Rocket Storm, that is going to help my score quite a bit. Second wave gets defended though, and then third wave is a camo wave. And it's coming down close. We used the Rocket Storm ability last second, but we are good. Perfect. 4k away on the save up for Mad, and we still don't have that much time remaining. Round 64 also now hits. Lots of mobs incoming. I don't have the Rocket Storm ability available. It looks like these guys are going to run through. I did use the Hex ability to help me out quite a bit. Let's see. Okay, we take down the first fortified mob. There's 2 more remaining. We also have a Zelia on first, not strong targeting. That way Zelia helps me out for the mobs. But this third and final fortified mob is going to take me down. After a couple more attempts of this round though, we got a little bit better targeting with our Dartling and a Zelia and everything, and we did defend the fortified mobs. So now we've reached round 65. This is the round where I'm going to afford MAD, hopefully. We've got a heli crate ability about to be used. We use it and we're only $500 away from affording our MAD. Keeping the Rocket Storm targeted on the boss, of course, and we're going to target the totem actually on the right. It might seem weird why I'm targeting the totem on the right like that, but it'll make sense because I'm moving my MAD towards the right a little bit more as I want it to be close to the boss so it doesn't miss any of the missiles. Targeting our Dartling on the balloons now instead of the boss just to get income faster. And now we get our MAD up, but we don't use the MAD ability right when we get it. That's because the boss is teleporting right now in an invulnerable state. I'm going to wait to use the MAD ability until the final skull here though. Since the final skull is when things are most deadly, as it's going to teleport the balloons pretty much to the exit. So we want to deal with the final skull quickly. We also use the Hex ability from Azila to help us out against those Moabs. And it looks like we are going to be good with barely enough track length to spare. Still under 100k on the score, but we will have to spend a lot more cash. Just one normal MAD is not going to be enough for some of the later tiers, that's for sure. Now after the tier 2 defend, we are going to start building up the next tower, which is an engineer. I get a discounted cleansing foam under my village, and then I just Chinook it out of the area because doesn't really need to be placed in the center of the map, to be honest. We're not really using this guy as a decam. We're only using him for that overclock, which I do afford the overclock on round 71. And then the next 9 rounds, we are pretty much just stalling everything to the maximum, getting as many heli crate abilities as I can. And that takes us to the tier 3 defend, ladies and gentlemen, where I use totem and mad ability off the start, and we pretty much instantly hit that first goal. This will be a very quick kill, if I can actually damage the boss, but you can see here, the boss is actually in a location where my mad cannot hit it, unfortunately. And we've also got to deal with all of these BFBs too, which aren't that bad yet, but after we pass around 80, Super Ceramics will cause a lot more havoc than these non-Super Ceramics are causing. You can see here though, I moved the MAD to the bottom because our mad can actually damage the boss in this location as well, as the boss's hitbox is bigger than like the area that's getting blocked. So we hit that second skull pretty quickly, which is good. And now we are in round 81, which means Super Ceramics are a thing. Let's see how we're doing, and it looks like, yep, we're struggling. So we're gonna have to find a way to deal with those ceramics. This time around, we're gonna target the totem on the left and try to utilize the Chinook to make sure to blow back all of these ceramics and keep them stalled under the ice. That's part of the thing I can do. Yes, we're doing a decent job of it, at it here. And we're about to get that overclock back. And look at this, guys. I actually don't overclock my mad here. I overclock the heli because I want as much blowback as possible against these ceramics just to keep me alive. And then I also use the mad ability at the end of the round to help clean up everything. The mad is very weak against the regular rounds, but if you have the ability going, it's actually very strong against the regular rounds. So that's kind of what you just need to keep in mind here. We dealt with all the mobs eventually though, and with only balloons remaining, we kind of just want to keep them around. That way we can finish the boss off without passing too many rounds and dealing with too many blimps. But fortunately, that's not really the case, and we do reach round 82. Another big group of BFBs coming down to ruin my day. Thankfully though, we have Moab Hex available this time. That's going to chain on a lot of the BFBs. And the boss is almost dead as well. It's getting really close. That Moab in the front, we're good against it. Some ceramics getting blown back from my heli. Okay. We're hanging on by a thread. If just the regular rounds are already giving me issues on 82 though, how am I ever going to defend the rounds past 100 with an MAD setup? You'll have to see about that. Either way, the tier 3 boss has gone down. Defending that boss was easy, but defending the regular rounds alongside the boss is the difficult part. Now, before the tier 4 boss, this is where things get kind of interesting. I have to focus up on every round here, just timing my mad ability well, using Moab Hexes from Azili, sometimes using the totem, just to deal with the regular rounds. Thankfully though, on round 86, I get a little bit of a load off my shoulders as we do finally afford the Ultra Boost. This is going to be a huge addition to my defense because one, we can stack 10 Ultra Boosts on my MAD pretty easily, which will increase its rate of fire by 66% permanently. But then on top of that, by utilizing my heli to stall the rounds as much as possible, we can also stack on other towers. I've got an ice tower in the front, so I'm going to stack 10 on that as well. And then we can also stack 10 Ultra Boosts on our heli and Azili too. Now, I'm not exactly sure how the Ultra Boost works in the heli. I think it means you get more blowbacks if you have it Ultra Boosted. That's my hope. But then there's also a chance it only affects the attacking of the heli, which is not really that important to me, you know? Either way, with some good stalling of the rounds, we have now reached to the tier 4 defend with 10 stacks on my mad, 10 stacks on the ice tower, 10 on Azili, and 10 on my heli. So what's my plan for the tier 4 defense? Well, the mad with 10 Ultra Boost stacks should be more than enough to take care of the boss HP. The main concern, once again, is defending the regular rounds with it, which is why I have now purchased an Absolute Zero on my end. The Absolute Zero is fantastic for a couple of reasons. One, its ability is just great at slowing down blimps. But a big reason why I've purchased it is it can freeze balloons around the entire map, and the mad just is a ceramic creator. It can create so many ceramics, and I need something to freeze those ceramics and give me time to blow them back with the heli and just deal with them from my towers. On top of that, you have to remember our ice tower is also 10 times ultra boosted, so that means the freezes will be even more consistent. But either way, we hit that first skull incredibly fast, then I chinook my mad to the bottom, keeping it ultra boosted, and we're gonna hit that second skull pretty quickly as well. The tier 4 defense shouldn't be that difficult because this is most likely going to be a very similar looking setup for what I'm trying to defend the tier 5 boss with. And if I can't defend the tier 4 boss with my tier 5 setup, then that's gonna be a problem. We hit that second skull pretty quickly too. You can see what I'm talking about with the Absolute Zero though here. The blimps from round 100 are looking a lot easier and a lot less threatening to what I had to deal with beforehand. You might be wondering why I decided on the Absolute Zero as support when there's a lot of other upgrades I could have gone for, like Icicle Impale, Super Glue, Balloon Crush. There's a ton of good support upgrades in this game. The reason I decided on Absolute Zero is because one, it's pretty much the highest ranked tier 5 in the game right now, but it's also cheaper than all of the other options I just talked about. And something cheaper than Absolute Zero, such as a Relentless Glue or Snowstorm, I don't think would give me enough support. So that's why I decided on it. But boss is almost dead at this point. With one more mad ability, I should be able to wipe out the rest of round 102 and the tier 4 boss. With that defend though, we have eclipsed over 200k spent, which isn't great. I would have liked to be able to post a score under 200k, but it is what it is, you know what I'm saying? So after the tier 4 defend and prep for tier 5, there was one more purchase I made on round 110, and that's an Energizer. I felt like the Energizer would synergize, pun on words there, really well with my current setup, because for one, it's great with MAD. Pretty much all of the MAD's damage is from the ability, so you get 20% more abilities with the Energizer. It's great with the Zeely because I'll get more Zeely hexes off and more Zeely totems off. It's fantastic with the Absolute Zero as I get double the amount of Absolute Zero abilities. And then lastly, it can clean up ceramics, which is probably the biggest weakness of my setup right now. I don't have anything to pop ceramics. I have the Ice Tower, which freezes them. So after getting the Energizer, I did stack 10 Ultra Boosts on that as well in prep for the tier 5 defend. So now the question comes, can I defend this tier 5 boss? Current score is looking at 237k. Let's send it. 1.5 million HP. We are going to use the totem and mad ability off the rip. Try to target the mad where most of the missiles at least are hitting the boss and not getting blocked from the elevation. That is still probably the biggest weakness of my current defensive setup. The fact that I don't have full map coverage where I can hit the boss. A decent amount of room, my mad is just going to get completely blocked and there isn't much I can do about that. But one nice part I realized about the Absolute Zero here, and I didn't actually know this beforehand, is the Absolute Zero can freeze the blimps while they are getting pulled from phase. I thought while blimps were getting pulled from phase, like, they were pretty much invulnerable to freezes and slowdowns, that type of stuff, but good news to me that they aren't, as that's one of phase's strongest characteristics. And it can actually just like completely kill you if phase is really far along the map and it pulls a blimp to the exit. You just can't really do anything about it. Either way, as I've been doing with the previous tiers, I'm going to Chinook my mad to the bottom of the map, use a totem and use the mad ability. It looks like a lot of the mad missiles aren't really hitting the boss well here though. Maybe I used that mad ability slightly too early. It's still definitely worth for me to Chinook my mad down here though, even though it's also not getting Jungle Drums buff, just because if my mad was still in the center of the screen, it can't hit the boss at all, right? So a little bit of damage against the boss is better than no damage against the boss. And we use a third mad ability here. I'm hoping to hit that first skull soon. I'm trying to not pop the ZOMGs in the back of the map as well. Ideally, we kind of stole these rounds to the maximum. The longer I can stall the rounds, the less overall rounds I have to deal with. In that way, we can actually just focus our damage against the boss more, because if we push through too many rounds, then I'll actually have to focus my damage just to not die against a bunch of fortified ZOMGs coming out, for example. But unfortunately, with this mad ability, we take out that final ZOMG and start round 121. Round 121 though, use the Hex, use the totem, keep the mad targeted. That's a bunch of fortified ZOMGs, exactly what I was talking about being scared of. Good thing for me though is Absolute Zero has 100% uptime with the Energizer, so we can keep those guys slowed pretty much the entire time they're out here. And it's actually more than 100% uptime too, because there's Monkey Knowledge enabled. Normally in chimps where I'm doing the Absolute Zero and Energizer strat, you don't have the Monkey Knowledge, which reduces your ability cooldowns a little bit. So it's like 99% in chimps, I think. But it's actually 100% here, which is really cool. And we hit that second skull. Nice. First two skulls are pretty easy. The difficult part comes when skulls 3 and 4 hit. Because one, the boss is farther down the track. It will teleport things farther down the track. But two, the boss actually slows down the attack speed of your towers. That's a part of phase that people always forget about. And it slows the towers attacking by a decent margin as well. I guess this is a normal boss, so I think it slows it less for normal. I'll put up the table on the screen. But the elite boss, it slows it by an insane amount. Either way, that third shield is taken down pretty quickly. We still have some ZOMGs around from round 121, which is really good. I've been doing a fantastic job of stalling these rounds. And we are nearing that final skull as these Moabs start to cause some issues, so I have to target the mad away. That's what I'm trying to avoid doing, targeting our mad off of the boss, but sometimes that's what's required, unfortunately. Just like that though, on round 122, we hit the final skull. We're gonna move the mad, hopefully not pop those BFBs, and I have to retry this round. That's totally fine. After a couple more attempts of trying to beat round 122, we finally figured out a way to do it. We just have to freeze the BFBs immediately, and then move the mad at this point, and not pop any BFBs yet, Well, we actually popped a couple of BFBs in the mobs, but that's fine. We can clean those up. That wasn't too many. And then use the mat ability and target the mat on the BFBs a little bit. That's the unfortunate part. I couldn't beat this round without targeting my mat on the BFBs during that mat ability because there's just too many of the BFBs. So we have to forego a little bit of damage against the boss just to not die from the regular rounds, which I honestly didn't think the regular rounds would have been difficult with getting the Energizer and the Absolute Zero, but they still cause some issues, guys. I'm not gonna lie. Round 123 though, this is another very difficult round. A bunch of fortified ZOMGs. Thankfully though, the boss is pretty low on HP, so I'm hoping I can defend the boss and then focus the fortified ZOMGs afterwards. Absolute Zero slows are coming in clutch against the ZOMGs for sure, using the Hex as well. Okay. It's weird, the Hex was targeted on strong, but it didn't actually target the first fortified ZOMG, which is how you'd kind of expect strong targeting to work. I think it's because the Hex won't locate the ZOMG that's already getting pulled from phase. There's some sort of weird interaction with that. Either way, we use the mat ability and then try Chinooking the mat to the end of the map, but we die in that process. The reason why I tried Chinooking the mat is because if I just kept the mat in its original location, to hit the boss, I would have had to target fortified ZOMGs before the boss, and I would have just kept popping them into BFBs and fortified mobs and ended up going down. So at a certain point, I am going to need to Chinook this mat at the bottom just to focus only the boss and then deal with the ZOMGs afterwards, which is exactly what we did here a couple attempts later on round 123. First, I actually Chinooked my Azealia to the bottom of the map because I want to be able to totem buff the mat when it's at the bottom, using the Hex as per usual, using all of the Absolute Zero abilities, and then before I use this mat ability, I actually move the mat to the bottom. Last time I used the mat ability earlier. This way, we don't pop a single fortified ZOMG down yet, we focus all the damage on the boss, while stalling the ZOMGs with the Absolute Zero, keeping our heli target at the very end. Now there's only 50,000 boss HP remaining. We use another totem, another Absolute Zero ability. Come on. And I'm waiting on that mob Hex until now. Then we Hex and use mat ability last second. And this is enough to clear out all of the fortified ZOMGs with defending the boss, which leaves me with a score of 237,000. Now I was decently happy with that attempt, but I felt like I cut a good amount of cash, and you might be wondering how. We are going to try to do this without an Energizer. I created a save on round 110, which is when I bought the Energizer, so I can retry from this round without it, which is nice. And since I'm cutting the Energizer, not getting those ability cooldowns like I used to, I do need to get additional DPS, which I purchased in the form of an Alchemist to outbuff my Mad. And then on top of that, I get an Arctic Wind, which might seem really weird, but here's the idea with the Arctic Wind, guys. I can Chinook it to the top of the map, and then Chinook my Dartling onto the Arctic Wind platform, and bring my Alchemist up there too. And what this does is it brings up the elevation of my Mad to a spot where the Mad projectiles aren't going to get blocked when the boss comes out like it was beforehand, allowing me to damage the boss at all stages of the map this time around. So here we go with the tier 5 defense, guys. Can I do it? I think this is about a 26,000 price cut on the Energizer defense I had beforehand. Using the totem, using the mat ability, everything off of the rip here, trying to get a bunch of damage while the boss is at the top of the map. And you can see here all the blimps are now getting pulled. This is going to get challenging, the fact that I can't only use about half of the Absolute Zero abilities I used last time. There's a 50% downtime on it. And speaking about the 50% downtime, look at the map right now. There's just blimps everywhere. This is the type of stuff I'm going to have to deal with. Now, to deal with it, I kind of target the mat downwards, still hitting the boss, but in a location where I can snipe blimps before they exit in front of my Chinook. That way Chinook can like blow back the ceramics in the process too. Second mat ability ends up wiping out all the ZOMGs at the top too. And we are nearing that second skull, or that first skull rather, a lot quicker than the first time around. So that's good that we're ahead of pace here. It looks like the Arctic Wind platform play 100% was worth it. Right when we hit the skull, we move the Mad back to the middle of the map, of course, as I want it in the Jungle Drums range as much as possible. Jungle Drums is a fantastic buff, and use the next Mad ability. We're going to be Chinooking the Alk back into the Mad's range again once I get another Chinook for that too. And there's also one ZOMG remaining. That's another tactic we've got to utilize here. Stalling the rounds as much as possible is even more important now that I don't have Energizer, because yeah, dealing with the regular rounds is going to get incredibly difficult. So if I can just deal with less rounds by stalling better, that's helpful, right? We do have to target the Mad downwards at this point though to deal with the ZOMG insides. We got down to ceramics and then use the Absolute Zero ability to stall all the ceramics, and we can actually blow back the ceramics with the Chinook, which I didn't know. I thought if the ceramics were like frozen, Chinook would not really work on them, but you learn something new every day. Chinook still is pretty epic at that. Nicely done. We got ceramics all the way blown back to the top, which is fantastic. I wanted to see if I could deal with 2 entire skulls of phase before round 120 passed, and we might be able to do that. Chinooking my alchemist back in range did kind of self-sabotage me though, as it hit the ceramics with the potion and lowered the HP of the ceramics. It probably wasn't a good play, Chinooking the alchemist back, but it also does increase the damage of my mad, so there's like a give and a take with it, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. Either way, next mad ability should make us get enough damage to hit that halfway mark on the HP, and it does. Fantastic. With phase jumping forward though, that does end round 120 and round 121 starts. Bunch of BFBs coming out to ruin my day. Let's freeze them. Pretty soon after, a little more come out, and we're gonna have to target the mad to not die against this stuff, which is unfortunate. It'd be great if we could just keep the mad focused on phase every second of every day, but I do not have the luxury if I end round 120. And then we freeze the ZOMGs, use the mad ability against the ZOMGs, and wipe all of that out while dealing good damage to phase. One thing I noticed here though is I actually had a Zelia on first targeting, which is bad, as a Zelia was defortifying all of the ceramics. So I ended up redoing round 121 with a Zelia on strong. That way a Zelia does not defortify the ceramics this time around, and we can just keep those ceramics alive a little bit longer, staying on round 121 for as much time as I possibly can. And through this process, we actually hit the final skull of phase. And not only that, we still stole the round out a decent bit afterwards and get like a third of the shield down. But now round 122 has hit. This is a problem. Phase is pretty far along the map. It's going to pull the blimps, and I still need to deal with a decent amount of damage against phase while not dying against everything. You can see here these BFBs are blocking my mad projectiles like crazy. Am I going to be able to pop them all? We'll have to wait and see. Lots of mobs about to exit the map. I'm trying to spam the absolute zero ability. I get it off. Okay. Am I going to die against that final Moab? It looks like I somehow pop it just in time and I survive. That was crazy close. Oh my gosh. And we've got a couple ceramics remaining too at the Arctic Wind. I chinooked that towards the bottom of the map at some point too. I forgot to mention. Using another mad ability. Now I'm targeting the mad ability in a location where it's like not centered on the boss, which seems weird. Maybe I should have centered it on the boss, but I did that because I didn't want to pop the ceramics at the bottom of the map, right? So it's either I pop the ceramic at the bottom of the map and I start round 123 early, or I don't. Either way, we still start round 123. I couldn't stall the ceramic forever. And so there's a bunch of mobs and ZOMGs coming out. Those ZOMGs are exactly what I do not want to see at this point. That is a very scary sight, especially when phase pulls them like this. I used the absolute zero ability to try to buy me some time, and we try to get that mad ability off, but I can't in time. So I'm just gonna save you guys the struggles. I spent literally like, I think 45 minutes on round 123 alone. I really didn't spend that much time on these runs altogether, only a couple hours, but round 123 on this second run was an absolute pain in the butt. Either way, here's how we did it. I waited on my first absolute zero ability until there was 2 fortified ZOMGs out, and then I used that with a hex used early. The reason I used the hex early is because it actually chained onto the fortified ZOMG before it got pulled from phase, because we were talking about how it kind of had a weird interaction earlier. Then with the mad ability used, I actually can wipe out the rest of these fortified ZOMGs, even targeting my mad backwards to take care of that final one. The reason taking care of all the ZOMGs early is so important is because it makes it so then the mad can focus these Moabs, especially when they're getting pulled by phase and I don't die against the Moabs. Then, once I deal with all the mobs remaining from this round, I chinook the mad towards the bottom of the map, because I don't want to pop these ZOMGs yet, but I still want to deal damage against the boss. Basically, we're waiting for the mad ability to come off cooldown, and we'll finish off the boss with all of these ZOMGs in one fellow swoop through a mad ability and hex combination. So here we go. Mad ability, 50,000 HP on the boss remaining. Hex ability, targeting the mad quite a bit, and the boss goes down alongside of the ZOMG. Score is set at 211,375. Now, I felt pretty good about the score when I finished it. I thought this was a good way to pop phase with a little amount of cash spent. I learned a lot about phase in the process too. I didn't even know you could like slow down the blimps that got pulled from phase and all of that. I thought this would be a pretty competitive score. But a couple days later, the results are posted. Let's see. Round 1 of the playoffs is over. Congrats to the top 3. Number 1, Lynn Doley, 141,530 spent. Bro literally cut like 70k from my score. That's ridiculous. And then second and third were Pietrek and Jandolf with pretty close scores at like 173, 176k. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, I had to have been missing something. How did this guy cut so much score from me? Well, thankfully, there's recordings of all their submissions, of course. And looking at Lindoli's submission, they utilized an upgrade that I did not think about at all. A Moab Shove Heli. This could actually infinitely stall blimps, like fortified BFBs, for example, even through the pulls from phase. I had no idea this interaction was a thing. And what that allows is the player to just focus all of the mad damage basically on the boss at all times they need to. And because of that, you can cut a ton of cash on stuff like an Ultra Boost. I mean, Lindoli did this with only an Overclock and a Cold Arms Village, which is insane, a 4th tier alch buff. And they also switched Azili for Churchill, which I thought about using Churchill. I wasn't sure about it. But Churchill level 20 is incredibly strong, and I guess Churchill can probably help you deal with the balloons at the start of the round too before you get it down to 1 BFB remaining. So this was a pretty smart strategy from Lindoli. You might also be wondering how Pietrek and Jandolf did this as well. They pretty much took the same exact strategy with a Moab Shove Heli and a Mad with Churchill combination. And it wasn't only them as well. Pretty much every submission that used a Mad strategy used a Moab Shove as well. I guess I was the only one in BTD6 that did not know how the Moab Shove worked with phase. So yeah, my score got absolutely cooked. Either way, we still beat out a couple people. Most of these guys using different strategies that did not involve the Mad. Like, I think Mac and Rose, for example, used a ninja-based strategy. So it's pretty cool to see other strategies being used, but Mad was definitely a superior one. And then a lot of people just did not submit at all. 5 people out of the 16 competitors, which is just kind of crazy to me. Like, you made it this far in the tournament not to submit. There were tons of people who didn't submit in the group stage already, so it's not something that's like uncommon. But yeah, I got pretty cooked this round. I honestly didn't spend that much time on my run anyways, so wasn't expecting great results. This next week though, if it's an interesting boss event, I should have a good bit of free time to go for a good score. So we'll see about that. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Round like out. Peace guys. Have a good one.